Hello and welcome to another episode of Sleep Meditation. Today, we are going to be attempting to go to sleep, but we are going to be succeeding. Why? Because I'm going to make you succeed. This is what I do. I am businessman, and this is business transaction. You understand? Very good. Now, you need to be able to sit down and listen. More specifically, lay down and listen. Lay down and listen. Compare yourself to a bird. You know why the bird fly in the air? Yes, it has wing, correct. But you know when the bird in the air doing this, it has to stop flapping so it soars. You need to stop flapping. Your bed is your wing. Your bed is not flapping. Your mind shouldn't be flapping either. Let your mind take a step back. Let your mind take this load off. I'm going to be reading you a story. Not just any story. I'm going to be reading The Hobbit. You know The Hobbit? You might have seen the movies. Or you might have seen Lord of the Rings. My son introduced me to those movies, and he said that people like them because they have elements that do not exist in real life. The element we do have in real life is sleep, and I am about to induce it into you. I know you like it when I induce stuff into you, so sleep is going to be one of these things. This is The Hobbit. Very small book. I don't know why it's so small. My son bought it, but hopefully my eyes can be capable of reading. I'm going to be reading the first chapter. It's called An Unexpected Party. Yes? Are you closing your eyes? Because your eyes should be closed in order for your ears to work. Your eyes are also wing of bird. Stop flapping them. Flap your ears maybe. Like Dumbo the elephant. You know Dumbo? Just don't fly away, please. Chapter 1. An Unexpected Party. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, like some holes I know, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole, with nothing in it to sit down on, or to cat, that's it, not cat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. A hobbit hole is not nasty, it just means comfort. Just like your bed. Consider your bed the hobbit hole. It had a perfectly round door like a porthole, painted green, with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened onto a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel. A very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The Hobbit was fond of visitors. The Hobbit likes visitors, and you probably like visitor, but not in your bed, at least not in this moment. Your bed is a place of solitude right now. The tunnel wound on, going fairly, but not quite straight into the side of the hill. The hill, as all the people for many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side and then on another. Now going upstairs for the Hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries. They have a lot of pantries. Wardrobes. He had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. Hobbit very lazy, huh? The best rooms were all on the left side, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set rounds of windows looking over his garden, and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. This hobbit was a very well-to-do hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were rich, but also because they never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would do, would say, on any question without the bother of asking him. Sound like you, yes? Did you sleep yesterday? No, I did not sleep. This is a story of how a Baggins had an adventure and found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbor's respect, but he gained, well, you will see whether he gained anything in the end. Let's see these gains, bro. The mother of our particular hobbit. What is a hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they have become some rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are, or were, a little people, about half our height, and smaller than the bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There is little or no magic about them, except the ordinary everyday sort, which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants, like Dumbo, which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach. I know a few people like this. They dress in bright colors, chiefly green and yellow. Wear no shoes because their feet grow natural leathery soles and thick warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly. Have long clever brown fingers, good-natured faces, and laugh deep fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. Now you know enough to go on with. As I was saying, the mother of this hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, that is, was the famous Belladonna Took, one of the three remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water. The small river they ran at the root of the hill. It was often said, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, which is the small river they ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said in other families that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was still something not entirely hobbit-like about them, and once in a while members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the family hushed it up, but the fact remained that the Tooks were not respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that the Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Miss Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her own money. That was to be found either under the hill or over the hill or across the water. and there they remained to the end of their days. Still, it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of his solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his makeup from the Took side. Something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so. Yeah, he did grow up indeed, and living in the beautiful Hobbit hall built by his father, which I just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. You know who else settled down immovably? Can you take a guess? Correct. That is you, Yahmar. You should be settled down immovably right now. You shouldn't be moving any muscle. Just breathe and listen. Easy. By some curious chance one morning long ago in the quiet of the world, when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast smoking an enormous long wooden pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, Gandalf came by. Gandalf, if you had heard only a quarter of what I have heard about him, and I have only heard very little of all there is to hear, you will be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place whenever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend the old Took died. In fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill and across the water on businesses of his own since they were all small hobbit boys and hobbit girls. Very cute habibis. All that the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. So Bilbo did not recognize him. He had a tall pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. Maybe Dr. Martin. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining and the grass was very green, but Gandalf looked at him from under long bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning? Or mean that it is a good morning, whether I want it or not? Or that you feel good this morning? Or that it is a morning to be good on?" So Gandalf was a little sarcastic piece of shit, yes? So Bilbo said, "All of them at once. And a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco out of doors into the bargain, if you have a pipe about you. Sit down and have a fill of mine." He wants to fill him with something of his. There is no hurry. We have all the day before us. Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. So he's doing smoking tricks before it was cool. "Very pretty," said Gandalf. "But I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure that I am arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." Maybe he should post something on Craigslist. "I should think so, in these parts," Bilbo said. "We are plain quiet folk, and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things make you late for dinner. I can't think what anybody sees in them," said Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another even bigger smoke ring So he's just doing smoke tricks and he's like, fuck your adventure, Habibi. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice to the old man. He had decided that he was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. No, he stood leaning on his stick, gazing at the Hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. No, Habibi, Bilbo, don't get cross. Good morning, he said at last. He's trying to get rid of him. We don't want any adventures here. Thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water. By this, he meant that the conversation was to an end. What a lot of things you do use good morning for. So Gandalf was shocked because Bilbo used good morning in 15 different ways. Now you mean that you want to get rid of me and that it won't be a good day till I move off? Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see. I don't think I know your name. Good idea. Yes, my dear sir. And I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins. And you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf. And Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good morninged by Belladonna Took's son, as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf was offended. Gandalf? Good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered. Not the fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants, and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of widows' sons. Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums. What the hell is a laburnum? Of fire, and hang in the twilight all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe. Also that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on, not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures. Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite I mean, you used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. This Bilbo is a piece of work. Where else would I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly, at any rate, and that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for. I beg your pardon? I haven't asked for anything. Yes, you have. Twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable too. Very likely if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning. But please come to tea, anytime you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. Bilbo is bipolar. With that, the Hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door and shut it as quickly as he dared, not to seem rude. Yeah, because this is not rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said to himself, as he went to the pantry, so he regret invite to tea. He had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after his fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while he stepped up and with the spike of his staff scratched a queer sign on the Hobbit's beautiful green front door. Then he strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. Bilbo thought he was off the hook. The next day, he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well because he ate cake so much, unless he put them down on his engagement tablet, like his iPad. Like this: Gandalf tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind, so he did not put it in his little journal iPad. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell. He then remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle and put out another cup and saucer and an extra cake or two and ran to the door. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt and the very bright eyes under his darker green hood. As soon as the door was opened, he pushed inside, just as if he had been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg. "And Dwalin, at your service," he said with a low bow. "Bilbo Baggins, at yours," said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "I'm just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff perhaps, but he meant it kindly. "And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung his things up in your hall without a word of explanation?" It's a good question. I would tell him to leave. Simple. Hobbit better than me. They had not been at table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. "So you have got here, at last." That was what he was going to say to Gandalf this time. So he thought it was Gandalf, but it was not Gandalf. Instead, there was a very old-looking dwarf on the step with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door opened, just as if he had been invited. "I see they have begun to arrive already," he said when he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it. "And Balin, at your service," he said with his hands on his breast. "Oh, Habib, thank you," said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say. But they have begun to arrive had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck to it however painful. He might have to go without. "Come along in and have some tea," he said after taking a very deep breath. Something you should do as well. "A little beer would suit me better, if it is all the same to you, my good sir," said Balin, with the white beard. "But I don't mind some cake, seed cake if you have any." So he wants beer, he wants seed cake. I'll give you seed cake, habibi. Lots. So Bilbo had seed cake. Bilbo found himself answering to his own surprise, and he found himself scuttling off to the cellar to find a pint beer mug, and then to a pantry to fetch two beautiful round seed cakes, which he had baked that afternoon for his after supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and the Dwellin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the beer and the cake in front of them, when loud came a ring at the bell again, and then another ring. Gandalf, for certain this time, Bilbo thought. But it was not. It was two more dwarves, both with blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards, and each of them carried a bag of tools and the spade. And they hopped. As soon as the door began to open, Bilbo was hardly surprised at all. "What can I do for you, my dwarves?" he said. "Kili, at your service," said one, and Fili, added the other, and they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. "At yours and your families," replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time. "Dwalin and Balin here already, I see," said Kili. "Let us join the throng." "Throng," thought Mr. Baggins. "I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute and collect my wits and have a drink." He had only just had a sip in the corner while the four dwarfs sat round the table and talked about mines and gold and troubles with the goblins and the depredation of dragons and lots of other things which he did not understand. He did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous. When ding-dong-a-ling-dang, his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit boy was trying to pull the handle off. "Someone at the door," he said. "Some four, I should say by the sound," said Fili. "Besides, we saw them coming along behind us in the distance." The poor little hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands and wondered what had happened and what was going to happen and whether they would all stay to supper. Then the bell rang again louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4 after all, it was 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He had hardly turned the knob before they were all inside, bowing and saying, "At your service," one after another. Dori, Nori, Ori, Owen, and Glowin were their names, and very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood, a brown hood, and a white hood were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched with their broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts to join the others. Already it had almost become a throng. Some called for ale, and some for porter, and one for coffee, and all of them for cakes. So the hobbit was kept very busy for a while. He's working as a server now. A big jug of coffee had just been set on the hearth. The seed cakes were gone, and the dwarfs were starting on a round of buttered scones, when there came a loud knock. Not a ring, but a hard rat-tat on the hobbit's beautiful green door. Somebody was banging with a stick. Bilbo rushed along the passage, very angry, and altogether bewildered and bewildered. This was the most awkward Wednesday he had ever remembered. He pulled open the door with a jerk, and they all fell in, one on top of the other. More dwarves, 4 more. And there was Gandalf behind, leaning on his staff and laughing. He had made quite a dent on the beautiful door. He had also, by the way, knocked out the secret mark that he had put there the morning before. Carefully, carefully," he said. "It is not like you, Bilbo, to keep friends waiting on the mat," and then opened the door like a pop gun. "Let me introduce Bifur, Bofur, Bombur, and especially Soren." At your service, said Buffer and Bomber standing in a row. Then they hung up 2 yellow hoods and the pale green one, and also a sky blue with a long silver tassel. This last belonged to Soren, an enormously important dwarf. In fact, no other than the great Soren Oakenshield himself, who was not at all pleased at falling flat on Bilbo's mat with Buffer and Bomber on top of him. For one thing, Bomber was immensely fat and heavy. Soren indeed was very haughty and said nothing about service, but poor Mr. Baggins said he was sorry so many times that at last he grunted, "Pray don't mention it." He stopped frowning. "Now we're all here," said Gandalf, looking at the row of 13 hoods, the best detachable party hoods, and his own hat hanging on the pegs. "Quite a merry gathering. I hope there is something left for me, for the latecomers to eat and drink. What's that, tea? No, thank you. A little red wine, I think, for me." "And for me," said Soren. So all these uninvited guests, the chapter is not even done yet. All these uninvited guests came into this house, this Hobbit hole, and bothered the poor Hobbit. Imagine if that happened to you right now. 13 people walk into your bedroom and bother you. But it's not happening. You are on your own. You are relaxing on your own. You can hear your own thoughts. You can close your eyes. You have the option to just sink into solitude. That is a privilege, ya Hamar. So use this privilege. Do not work, do not worry. Do not flap your wings anymore for the night. A good night's sleep is the equivalent of a bird not flapping its wings. I hope this helped you. Go to sleep. I hope this helped you relax. I hope this helped you get into a state where you are able to go to sleep. And if it did not, lucky you, I have other videos on this channel. So if you're not asleep, go play them. It's not a suggestion, it's an order. And if you are not subscribed, I don't even know what to tell you. Subscribe, ya Hamar. I hope you have a good night. Good night.